Thank you very much. My name is Hakan Aksay. I've spent many years working as a journalist and as a researcher in Russia. I've lived in Turkey for the past 6 years, being an observer for T24, and a web publication. I am rather sad to acknowledge that one of the sources of instability in the Middle East is my own country, Turkey, and the Turkish government. More than that, the Turkish government is reluctant to change its erroneous policies with regard to Syria and the entire region. For the past 5 years, this leads to very tragic results. The Turkish government is mainly fighting Kurds in Syria, and by that, Ankara effectively supports some of the radical Islamic groups. At the very least, they make it harder for anti-terrorist forces to fight those terrorists. Also in other regions of the world, such as Nagorno-Karabakh, the disputed territory between Armenia and Azerbaijan, there the Turkish government is also trying to play some role. This erroneous foreign policies have resulted in, among other things, in the crisis in the Russian-Turkish relations, starting from November 24th last year, when Turkish forces shot down a Russian bomber jet. Prior to that, for 25 or 30 years, Russia and Turkey were building a friendly relationship, step by step, painstakingly overcoming the differences, and this successful work was crushed, destroyed within a matter of several weeks last year. And now, several months since the downing of the Russian bomber over Syria, we see no apologies from the Turkish government, no compensation, no change of course. And those were the main demands of Russia. Since last November, the Turkish-Russian relationship has become even more strained. I don't want to go into more detail of the policies of the Turkish government or the domestic policies, or what the government has been doing domestically in Turkey, and that is a crackdown on free speech, on political parties, on newspapers. Just yesterday, I read a report that, according to the human rights organization Journalists Without Borders, Turkey rates 125th in their ranking of the freedom of speech. That is, Turkey has gone down two positions since last year. I don't have much time to focus on any of this, so I would like to just offer a few of my own thoughts and proposals as regards the relationship between Turkey and Russia. If I may share my vision with you, I feel that it might be high time, not only for Turkey, but also for the Russian government to look at the results, at the midterm results of the past 5 months. Over the past 5 months, we see almost no changes for the better. When the Russian bomber was downed over Syria, Russia's reaction was very strong, very resolute. There was a lot of emotion, and the dispute got somewhat personified. It got personal. It got personal with Russia. If you remember, President Putin described the downing of the Russian plane by Turkish air defense forces as stabbing as stabbing Russia in the back from what Russians thought of as a friend. And after that, there was a certain freezing of the relations between Russia and Turkey diplomatically, and it was followed by speculation from a lot of the journalists and politicians that this kind of attitude, this kind of enmity will remain from Russia in regard of Turkey until Erdogan is forced to resign or even stand trial. I do understand the sentiment in Russia, but I would suggest choosing the right path, the right course for it. Sadly, Russia's reaction, Russia's retort or rebuttal to the actions of the Erdogan government was not limited to the military and political sphere. It also affected other areas such as trade, construction, production, and of course primarily tourism. Mutual tourism between our countries has crumbled. It's effectively no longer. Of course, Russia was harmed by that as well, but primarily it was Turkey. And of course, this severance, this disruption of economic and trade relations between the two countries, it has disaffected a lot of people, and this has also affected their feelings for Russia in turn. The Russian-Turkish cross-cultural year has been cancelled. The opening of a Russian-Turkish library, the library has been shut down. So these cultural exchange and humanitarian cooperation, it's also been shut down following this fallout in November last year. So it's the main street. It's regular people who get hurt. Primarily Turks who have families in Russia, who live in Russia, who work in Russia, who have friends and families here, either legitimately or illegitimately, but now they've been subjected to inspections and checks in Russia. Some of them have been barred entry into Russia despite having all the right documents. According to some reports, between 10 and 15,000 Turks have had to leave Russia. Some of the families are now in a difficult situation when there is a Russian woman and a child who are in Russia and their Turkish husband has had to go back. So unfortunately, this is a human issue. I do know that President Putin and Minister Lavrov have repeatedly emphasized that they don't confuse the people of Turkey and the Turkish government. They are still friends. They claim to be still friends with the people of Turkey while having issues with the Turkish government. But in reality, the actual results are somewhat different. There are many examples to be found, but the most recent of them is the following. Yesterday, I arrived in Moscow from Turkey, and at the customs in Moscow, a young customs officer stopped me and started asking me questions, and she looked at me with much suspicion. And now, judging from her age, I must have lived more years in Russia than her. I was in the Red Square when the red flag of the Soviet Union was brought down and replaced by the modern-day flag of Russia. I was there in 1993 when there was fighting in Moscow and the building of the parliament was shelled. So looking at this young girl at the customs, I was thinking, who is more Russian, her or me? But I realized that because I'm carrying a Turkish passport, for her I am one of those people who shot down the Russian jet. But I do understand that this officer and other people like her, they don't act on direct orders from Mr. Putin or Mr. Lavrov. But it really does trickle down from the very top. It is the senior officials who set the tone, who actually lead the way. And once once all those smaller officials and officers see and hear their statements, their belligerent statements, they actually start crafting their action accordingly. And from what I've been reading on social media, I can tell you that nowadays a lot of people in Russia no longer like Turkey. They feel about Turkey as a country. And respectively, in Turkey, a lot of people used to be actually fans of President Putin and used to feel very good for Russia. But nowadays, according to some surveys, Russia is that now Turkey is one of 3 countries that is seen as enemies in Russia, together with Ukraine and the US. And respectively, many people see Russia as a threat to Turkey's national security. A recent poll showed that 65% of all Turks think this way, and just 2 years ago that number was only 28%. Unfortunately, it was mass media that played a negative role in getting to this sad situation, and the fault it is both Russian and Turkish media to blame. Their coverage was subjective and divisive and highly intolerant on both sides. Because of that, regular people suffer, primarily the Turks who live in Russia. I will give you this interesting fact. During the recent election in Turkey, there were remote, long-distance election for Turkish residents held in Moscow, Petersburg, and other major Russian cities. And the Turks living in Russia, 75% of them voted for the opposition party in Turkey. So mainly they don't support, the Turks living in Russia mainly don't support Erdogan, but they are collectively being punished for what the Erdogan government has been doing. So maybe we should think of restarting, relaunching some of the aspects of our economic, social, cultural, and humanitarian relations. I might also propose to you, Ambassador Popov, or someone else. In Turkey, I have contacts and links to many representatives of the public, writers, journalists, intelligentsia. They are willing to speak to their counterparts in Russia and make a joint statement, or hold a conference, or maybe launch some kind of a bilateral initiative, maybe a mini forum, something like a mini Valdai forum. To be honest, intelligentsia, the intellectuals, the public, both in Turkey and in Russia, they are somewhat scared. You know, if we start advocating friendship with the other country, what will the government say? You know, those are the concerns. So we probably should somehow resolve that. Russia has said from day one of the Russian-Turkish crisis, Russia has been saying that it will not accept mediation from any third country, such as Kazakhstan or Azerbaijan. But why not? Maybe such mediation would be helpful for relaunching, restarting our cooperation on the official level. And maybe then new opportunities for improving our situation will come up. So this policy of bringing your opponent down on their knees, I understand that there were certain reasons for this sentiment in Russia, but this policy has not been rewarded, has not shown itself as efficient in the past 5 months. So maybe it would be advisable to change this kind of die-hard, hardliner attitude for the sake of the overall relationship between Russia and Turkey. Maybe both our governments should somehow amend their attitude to get a headway in restoring our relations. Maybe there won't be official apologies from Ankara. Maybe it will have another form. But I am optimistic that one way or another we will get ahead. Thank you.